Okay, and we're back with another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest. I'm Seth from the Lonely Stunner podcast, and this is episode 62 of my side quest. Now, this episode we're going to be looking at a Bleacher Report article where they're saying the UFC is running out of stars. Where basically asking, can the UFC find its next megastar now that Alex Pereira has lost his UFC light heavyweight championship? That being said, of course, Alex Pereira has lost a lot of aura. We all know that. And he's not a megastar now, he's not got the belt anymore. That being said, if he comes back and wants to knock out Ankalaev in a rematch, is he a megastar again? In my opinion, low key. But assuming we're in the current position where Alex Pereira lost his championship and is no longer a megastar, who else does the UFC have, and what guys could they potentially be looking at for the future? Particularly, I think it's important to have stars at the bigger weight classes where, like I said, historically, that's sort of where the UFC's biggest stars have been at. Apart from Conor McGregor, they've not really had any mega stars at the lower weight divisions. You had GSP, who was at welterweight, Anderson at middleweight, and John Jones at light heavyweight, and formerly guys like Brock at heavyweight and stuff. But yeah, it looks like most of these guys that could potentially take over the reign as next UFC megastar, they're all in the lower weight divisions, which is an interesting situation to be in. Of course, we did kind of have low-key a bit of a megastar in the lower weight divisions recently in Sean O'Malley, but Sean O'Malley's, like Alex Pereira, has lost his world championship. Of course, Sean O'Malley lost it to Belal. Not Belal. Jesus. He lost it to Marab. In what was a pretty comprehensive performance from Marab. It looks like they're going to be running it back and giving Sean O'Malley a rematch against Marab for the UFC Bantamweight Championship. Of course, Israel Adesanya was formerly a bit of a star for the UFC as well, and was when he was on his run at middleweight, defending his world championship quite often. But he's lost his belt, and to be fair, he looks shot to bits at this point. A number of convincing losses. And he's not really back in the mix anymore in terms of being a superstar as well. Especially his most recent loss to Imavov, which was a brutal knockout, got put straight on his ass, right? And of course, John Jones is still active. John Jones isn't at light heavyweight anymore, but is now at heavyweight. And there was rumours around Pereira and John Jones fighting at one point. In my opinion, of course, John Jones he's only coming back to 205 for a world title fight, and he would only fight Pereira because it would be such an easy fight for him. My opinion, I actually think John Jones probably would beat Ankalaev. I think he probably would beat Ankalaev, but of course, Ankalaev is a much, much, much harder fight than Alex Pereira for John Jones. Don't believe for a second that John Jones would ever strike with Alex Pereira. John Jones has got far too high IQ to, play those sorts of games with Alex Pereira. But let's go into the guys who Bleacher Report think could potentially be stars for the UFC. Paddy Pimblett. Now, Paddy Pimblett's been on a really good run in the UFC. He's now 6-0 with 4 finishes and has got big wins over Tony Ferguson and Bobby Green. And of course, he's fighting former Bellator light heavyweight world champion Michael Chandler at UFC 314, which will be very soon when this video comes out. But Paddy Pimblett definitely has the sort of appeal there. Scouse, blonde, English, funny personality to the sort of casual viewer, not particularly to me. But yeah, he's okay. He's fine, right? Bit of that cheeky, trappy personality that Conor sort of had at times. But yeah, Paddy Pimblett's got some potential as long as he can keep winning. Paddy Pimblett's the sort of guy like a Darren Till where if he's not winning, no one's really going to care about him. They're going to think, oh, he's kind of funny, and then just forget about him. Exactly like what's happened with Darren Till. Paddy Pimblett, he's kind of interesting to me because he's not a great striker in terms of fundamentals. He's more of a grappler. Which, in my opinion, I think now is kind of more rare to see grappling superstars. If you're really going to be a superstar in the sport, you've got to be able to knock guys out. Like Alex Pereira, and even like an Izzy, where Izzy wasn't really knocking guys out, but his fights would be mostly striking. John Jones as well, mostly a striker. I know guys that say, oh, he's a wrestler. He's a striker, right? And then you look at the other guys, the other champions, guys like Marab and Bilal, they're not really stars. And they're not going to be, because even if they can sell the fight great in press conferences, their style of fighting isn't entertaining. That being said, Marab has become more entertaining with taunting more and that sort of thing, and sort of clowning Umar when he fought him. But I go on a tangent to say all of that about Paddy Pimblett. If Paddy Pimblett can beat Michael Chandler, then that's a serious win for him. Like I said, Paddy Pimblett's not a great striker, and Michael Chandler is an okay boxer. That's all he seems to do, though. He doesn't seem to wrestle. Michael Chandler could probably get Paddy Pimblett down, and probably could beat him up, to be fair. Could probably do some ground and pound on him and beat him up pretty comprehensively, but Michael Chandler seems to be allergic to wrestling, even though he's probably got, well, we know he's got really good amateur wrestling pedigree. Just wants to strike, which, I hear it. But if he wants to do that, then that's, a bit more of a risky game for Chandler, especially at his age, where he's getting on a bit. But Paddy's got a good chance there. Momentum sort of suggests that Paddy would win this, but MMA math very rarely works. But if Paddy Pimblett can beat Michael Chandler, then maybe have another really impressive win. If he could beat someone like Dariush or Moicano or a Gaethje, if he could beat one of those guys and then get to a title shot, then he's a superstar. He's an absolute superstar at that point. So, like I said, he's 2 fights away from being a superstar. If he can go 8-0 in the UFC, slowly working his way up the rankings, then, like I said, Paddy Pimblett could definitely be one of the UFC's future superstars. And who have Bleach Report got next? Khamzat Chimaev. Yeah, Khamzat, in my opinion, definitely one of the guys nailed on to be a future megastar for the UFC. As long as, like I said, he can just keep winning these fights, keep winning off these fights. He, early on in his UFC career, sort of gained notoriety because he just dominated guys, right? He just went out there and dominated guys. Of course, he was given some trouble by Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns. I think Kamaru Usman was on really short notice, and Gilbert Burns, in my opinion, it's sort of I've got a weird relationship with Gilbert Burns, because there's sometimes when I think, like, this guy is really good, and other times I'm like, what is this guy doing? So a bit of a love-hate relationship with Gilbert Burns there, but Kamaru Usman is no joke at all. Obviously, Chimaev is coming off his most impressive victory when he squashed Robert Whittaker's face, juiced his face like it was an orange, right? And it looks like Khamzat Chimaev's next in line for the UFC middleweight title against DDP, Dricus. Now, I do fancy Khamzat to beat Dricus, because I think, to be honest, I fancy damn near anyone against Dricus apart from Sean Strickland, because in terms of technique, this guy is awful. I'm not even going to get into it. Because everyone knows, everyone who's subscribed to this channel, everyone who's watched our podcast knows how I feel about Dricus du Plessis. Needless to say, Khamzat Chimaev is definitely one of those guys that is next in line to be a superstar. And if his next fight's for the title, and if he can win that title, 100% he's a superstar. And he can, start to build on that celebrity and make some title defenses. And the UFC could, if they want to, the UFC don't always want to do this, but if they wanted to, could really sort of nurture him and build him into a megastar for the UFC. Next, you got Diego Lopes. And now, Diego Lopes is a seriously good fighter. A guy who I'm really excited to see in the featherweight division. Now, obviously, his next fight is against Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski's coming off two bad knockouts. Coming off 2 bad knockouts. Like, if I was coming off 2 bad knockouts, the last guy who I would want to face is Diego Lopes. Right? Even where I think, technically, Volkanovski might actually be the better fighter. You've got Lopes, who's younger, more powerful, throws with seriously bad intentions. I don't fancy Volkanovski in that fight. And again, like Topuria, when he beat Volkanovski, Lopes beats Volkanovski, he sort of becomes a superstar in himself, right? And, that would then make Diego Lopes the UFC featherweight champion, following Ilia Topuria. I've been watching that Conor McGregor video too much. Ilia Topuria, innit? following Ilia Topuria vacating the featherweight championship, if Diogo Lopes was then to beat Volkanovski for the UFC featherweight championship, low-key would make him quite a big start, especially if you can do it in dominating fashion, where I know we've seen Volk be dominated recently with the losses against Islam and the loss against Ilia. But still, to dominate Volkanovski, even at this point in his career, is a very, very tough thing to do. Right? A very tough thing to do. So yeah, Diogo Lopes could definitely be up there as well. And lastly, we've got Ilia Topuria. And Ilia Topuria, in my opinion, I think he's a guy who already is a superstar for the UFC. The 2 wins he got at featherweight, like, in my opinion, that solidified him as a superstar. I guess really, my opinion doesn't really matter. My opinion doesn't really matter. What I think is more what the box office thinks of these guys. Because in my eyes, Ilia's already a superstar. But like I said, who cares what I think? But yeah, if Ilia can go up to lightweight, it looks like they want him to have one more, have a fight and then fight for the title if they want to do that. Ilia's going to be, like I said, a super hard guy to beat. And to be honest, the only guy I could really see beating Ilia is either Arman or Islam, who are guys right at the top of the division. And even in these fights, I could easily see Ilia winning. I could easily see Ilia knocking those guys out because he's got the boxing skill to do it, and he's already a very accomplished MMA grappler. He started off his career as submitting guys. He's not just a boxer. We all know that. We all know the rhetoric and the skill set of Ilia Topuria at this point. We all know this guy's not just a wrestler. He can wrestle very well, but he's a serious boxer as well and can put his hands together and turn his punches over brilliantly. So yeah, we'll see what's next for Ilia. Again, like most of these guys, they're really only 1 or 2 fights from away from being, nailed on superstars. So yeah, that's it from me. Another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest in the bag. Like I said, that's it from me. Episode 62 in the bag. And I'm out. Peace.